The cough began as a mere tickle, a phantom grain of sand lodged in the bronchiole tree, but it blossomed quickly into a geological event. It rattled the ribs of Private Anthony Faturos, shaking him until the horizon blurred, and the Matilda tank he huddled against seemed to vibrate. He pressed a rag to his mouth, stifling the sound, suffocating the noise in the heavy wool. When he pulled the rag away, the sputum was streaked with bright, oxygenated blood. He stared at it for a long moment. The red contrasted violently with the bleached white of the limestone dust covering his knees. With a quick, practiced motion, he scooped up a handful of sand and buried the evidence, just as a cat buries its waste. This was his secret, buried here in the assembly area west of El Alamein station. The medical officer at the casualty clearing station had waved it off as chronic bronchitis a month ago, but Anthony knew better. He had seen this specific shade of red in the slums of Melbourne. It was the wasting disease, a shadow on his lungs, a rot eating him from the inside out.
Hey Tony, you coughing up a lung again?
Private Colin Elliott slid into the scrape next to him, clutching a tin of bully beef like it was gold bullion. Elliott was 21, a fresh-faced kid from the frantic reinforcements sent to patch the holes left by Tobruk. He still had the smell of soap about him, faint beneath the cordite and sweat.
Just the dust, Cole.
Anthony rasped, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes.
This Egyptian sand has teeth. Chews you up.
Reckon it's more than dust, mate,
said, pausing to peel back the lid of the tin. He eyed the older man with genuine concern. Anthony leaned back against the cold steel of the tank tracks. The metal seeped a chill into his spine that had nothing to do with the desert night. He was dying. He knew it with the cold certainty of a man who had spent his life reading the odds at the track. If he went to the MO now, they would pull him off the line. They would send him to a hospital in Alexandria, then maybe a white ship back to Australia. He would die in a crisp bed, smelling of antiseptic and pity, while Elliott and Evans and the rest of the boys walked into the fire without him. No, the Faturos blood did not die in bed. His grandfather had fought the Turks with a curved blade. His cousins in Evgiros were currently fighting the fascists in the mountains of Lefkada and remembered the stories his father, Speros, had told him. Of the Koirospilia, the cave where the loyal swineherd Eumeus waited for his king. Anthony was the swineherd now. His duty was to hold the line until the end. He had a debt to pay, a ledger of small cruelties and wasted years in civilian life that he needed to balance. This war, this impending big show that Montgomery was planning, offered him a currency he could spend. He could trade his dying life for something tangible. He could buy time for Elliott. He could buy a future for Evans.
I'm fine, Cole,
Anthony said, his voice hardening into stone.
Giving my breath for the Jerrys.
Of the desert night sat on them like a physical weight. It was 21:30 hours. The moon was full, a pale, unblinking eye, casting long, skeletal shadows across the hardpan. The 2nd 24th Battalion was deployed in an extended line, 1,000 men lying flat in the dust, waiting for the end of the world. Lieutenant Colonel Weir had briefed them hours ago, his face a mask of grim determination.
We go through the minefield. We must break the crust.
Anthony checked his equipment for the 10th time. His webbing was heavy, cutting into his shoulders, weighed down by 50 rounds of .303 ammunition, 2 Mills bombs, and his entrenching tool. He ran his thumb along the edge of the shovel blade. He had sharpened it with a whetstone all afternoon until it gleamed silver. It was an old digger trick from the Great War. In the tight confines of a trench, a rifle was a clumsy club, but a sharpened shovel was an axe. Beside him, Albert Evans was shaking. The vibration traveled through the ground. Evans was a good man, a family man who wrote letters home every single day, describing the sunset to a wife he might never see again. He shouldn't be here.
Stay close to me, Albie,
Anthony whispered, his mouth close to the dirt.
I'm scared, Tony,
Evans confessed, his voice barely audible, cracking on the last syllable.
Good. Scared keeps you low. Scared keeps you alive.
At 21:40 hours, the sky ripped open.
Fire!
It wasn't a sound. There was a concussion that flattened the air in their lungs. Over 800 artillery pieces fired simultaneously behind them. The horizon turned into a strobing wall of sheet lightning, a man-made storm of impossible violence. The barrage roared overhead, a freight train of steel tearing through the sky to hammer the German positions 5 miles ahead. The ground jumped beneath Anthony's chest. The sergeants were screaming, but their voices were thin and reedy against the thunder. Whistles cut through the cacophony. The two 24ths rose from the dust and began the walk. They walked straight into the Devil's Gardens. Anthony moved with a strange, feverish energy. The adrenaline surged through him, suppressing the pain in his chest, replacing the rot with a cold, crystalline clarity. He saw the battlefield in high definition, the tripwires glinting in the flare light, the chaotic dance of the tracers, the eruptions of earth where the shells landed. They hit the first minefield. Boom. A trooper to his left evaporated in a pink mist, simply ceasing to exist.
Keep moving, don't stop.
They reached the enemy wire. The German machine guns, Spandos, opened up, their ripping canvas sound distinct and terrifyingly fast. Green traces snapped past Anthony's ear like angry hornets. The section pinned down instantly. They were caught in the open, the wire uncut, the kill zone perfectly calibrated.
We're stuck!
Elliot screamed, burying his face in the dirt, his hands over his helmet. Anthony looked at the wire. He looked at the machine gun nest spewing death. He felt the illness bubbling in his throat, the copper taste of blood rising to meet the dust. He had weeks to live, maybe days. Elliot had 50 years. The math was simple. It was just numbers. Anthony stood up.
Faturos, get down!
Someone yelled. He didn't listen. He charged the wire. He didn't run with the grace of a hero. He ran with the desperation of a man escaping a burning building. He threw himself onto the barbed coils, the barbs tearing at his tunic and flesh, snagging him, holding him fast. He became the bridge.
Over me! Go! Go!
He roared, the metal biting into his chest. Elliot and Evans hesitated, horror on their faces.
Move!
Anthony screamed, spitting blood. They scrambled over his back, their boots driving the barbs deeper into his skin, using his body as a ramp to cross the obstacle. As the last boot cleared him, Anthony rolled off, ignoring the shredding of his skin. He stumbled toward the machine gun post, a demon of dust and blood. He threw his first grenade. The explosion silenced the gun for a heartbeat. He jumped into the trench before the dust settled. It was close. Brutal work. He swung the sharpened entrenching tool, the blade biting deep into the shoulder of a German gunner who tried to raise a Luger. The bone crunched. A second German lunged with a bayonet. Anthony parried with his rifle stock and drove the shovel edge into the man's neck. He stood panting in the blood-slicked trench, coughing violently, his body seizing up. He spat a mouthful of red onto the grey German uniform.
Rest easy, mate.
He wheezed to the corpse.
I'll be joining you soon.
By 0400 hours, the battalion was fragmented. The confusion of the night attack had broken the companies into small, isolated groups, fighting their own private wars. They were pushing toward the railway line, aiming for the sector that would later be known as the Blockhouse. Anthony's group held a shallow depression near a ridge. They were low on ammo. The Germans were counterattacking with tanks. The illness was claiming him now. The exertion of the charge had ruptured something deep in his lung. Every breath was a bubbling agony, a drowning sensation on dry land. He sat in the bottom of the trench, his face as pale as the moon above. Albert Evans was hit. A piece of shrapnel had taken him in the gut. He lay in the sand, his hands clutching the wound, his eyes wide with the sudden, terrible realization of death.
Tony!
Evans gasped. Anthony crawled over. He uncorked his water bottle, precious water he had saved, and pressed it to Evans's lips.
I'm here, Albie.
Tell my wife.
You tell her yourself.
Anthony lied, smoothing the hair back from Evans's sweating forehead.
We're going to get you out.
But he knew they wouldn't. The German tanks were closing in. He could hear the squeal of their tracks, the guttural roar of their Maybach engines chewing up the desert. Anthony looked at Elliot. The kid was paralyzed, staring at the approaching monsters.
Cool.
Anthony said, his voice surprisingly steady.
Take Albie's ammo. Get the boys back to the ridge line. The anti-tank guns are there.
What about you?
Elliot asked, his eyes darting between Anthony and the ridge.
I'm going to buy you a minute.
No, Ant, you can't.
Anthony grabbed Elliot by the webbing and pulled him close.
Look at me. I'm already dead. The cough, it's got me. I've got the rot. If I go back, I die in a bed. Let me do this. Let me make it count.
Elliot saw the truth in his eyes, the blood on his lips, the feverish sheen on his skin. He realized then that the ghost had been walking beside him for weeks. He nodded, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face.
Go!
Elliot scrambled out of the trench, dragging 2 other wounded men with him. Anthony was alone. He checked his pouches. 1 grenade left. 5 rounds in the magazine. He stood up and looked towards the east, towards the dawn that was just beginning to bleed purple into the sky, towards Greece, towards Evgiros. For a moment, the desert vanished. He imagined he could see the village on the hill. He saw the olive groves, the blue sea, the cave of Eumaeus. He felt the presence of his ancestors, the Faturos clan, standing on the ridge line of history, watching him. I am not a victim, he thought. I am a volunteer. The Panzer III crested the dune, its 50mm cannon traversing toward him. The machine was massive, an apex predator of steel. Anthony didn't fire. He waited. He let the tank come closer until he could smell the exhaust, until the ground shook so hard it rattled his teeth. He pulled the pin on the grenade. He held the spoon tight. He began to walk toward the tank. He coughed. A final, violent expulsion of blood and sickness, purging the weakness from his body.
For the 24th of February.
He screamed, his voice cracking.
For Lefkada!
He broke into a run. The tank's coaxial machine gun fired. The bullets hit him. 1, 2, 3 impacts that felt like sledgehammers against his chest, but the forward momentum of his redemption carried him on. He fell, sliding under the reach of the gun, his body rolling into the path of the tracks. He released the spoon. The explosion broke the track of the Panzer, slewing it sideways, the metal screeching as the beast died, blocking the path of the tank behind it. In the silence that followed, before the war rushed back in to fill the void, there was only the wind.